have a Priority 1 alert message from Fleet Headquarters.
What does it say?
Cylon attack underway.
Well, the goals of the miniseries were nothing short of reinventing the science fiction genre. We wanted to present people in a catastrophic situation, in the wake of a tragedy, responding like human beings actually would, through the prism of the science fiction genre.
I think going into it, we all wondered, what the audience numbers were going to be, especially given all the internet sort of controversy and general sort of, falderall about what we were doing and people objecting, and was it going to be a failure, was it not? The first night's ratings were good, but not great, and we were sort of all waiting to see what the drop-off in the second night would be, because there's always a drop-off in the second night, and then the ratings actually went up.
That's the most exciting thing to me, that the second night performed better than the first, and that says to me that we actually got people in who would never have watched Battlestar Galactica. We got a non-sci-fi audience to watch science fiction.
I've done enough work in my life to understand how difficult it is to create something, and then it's even more intense to do a miniseries and then go on to make it into a viable series.
It's exciting to try and bring something new to people who are already in love and devoted to a certain genre or a certain story.
I can honestly say that the series is better than the miniseries.
The miniseries ends with the escape of the survivors of the Holocaust. This ragtag fleet accompanying the Battlestar Galactica on a quest to find a place called Earth.
The story starts almost as soon as where it has left off from this cliffhanger in the miniseries, and it starts off with us jumping from the Cylons every 33 minutes.
The people on Galactica are unaware of why, but for some reason, every time the Galactica and the ragtag fleet jump away, it takes 33 minutes for the Cylons to figure out where they are, and the Cylons jump and find them again.
And the newly bedraggled ragtag fleet is found in this desperate sort of bid to escape from this chasing enemy.
We have 33-minute breaks, so it's long enough to brush your teeth, fuel up your Viper and go back out again.
People are brought right back into that world of it and trying to catch up on what's going on, and you figure it out as you go.
The actors that are playing human had to be very, tired and bedraggled and exhausted.
Why do the Cylons come every 33 minutes? Why isn't it 34, 35?
Callie.
What?
Shut up.
Insomnia, nobody's slept. Everyone's just coming to terms with the fact that they've lost everybody that they love and relate to.
They're starting to wonder if they're ever going to get away, and the body count is stacking higher and higher.
It was a hard episode because you just you had to basically fall apart.
Starbuck, fire a burst across their bow.
Copy that.
Boomer, let Galactica know we have a problem out here.
I think fans should expect a hard-hitting drama that happens to be a sci-fi show. I think fans should expect something that challenges them. I think fans should expect something that surprises them. They should expect to be, at times, horrified, at times titillated, at times cheering, and at times, perhaps, deeply struck by the sadness of these people.
Well, I think the new Battlestar Galactica is kind of opening its own kind of doors. And I think it's a good bridge between science fiction fans, because we have the action, we have the special effects, we have the science fiction genre, but then we also have the more realism side.
I think it seems that we're almost carving out another definition or another dimension of sci-fi.
Well, I hope that Battlestar Galactica will herald a new movement in science fiction where reality and realistic characters and a more grounded approach to the genre is something that other writers and producers will explore in different ways as well.
Try this.
No enemy contacts.
Keep the clock running.
Yeah, the visual style, and this was very much Ron Moore and David Icke's vision before I was even brought in, was we want to make a documentary style science fiction show. We want it to feel real. We want it to feel the grit of what it's like to live in a spaceship, what it's like to have the world destroyed.
That was one of the very first decisions, to make the show sort of a documentary look and feel to the whole thing.
Episode 1 is extremely doco style because the characters haven't actually slept for 5 days and they've been running from the Cylons for the 250th time, and it's very stressful, and they're all about to lose the plot completely because they've had such sleep deprivation.
I don't think that this is the only way to tell a story. This is not the only way to do science fiction, but it's the way we've chosen to do it. This is our take. This is our presentation of the material. This is the story we have chosen to tell.
It is dark. We're not apologizing for that.
Some of the shows are quite controversial.
It's too shocking and it's too dark and the sex is outrageous.
That's what makes good TV. I think that audiences are smarter now, and they want to see the smart, realistic television.
Every week the show is going to be different. It's always going to slightly confound your expectation.
Just saw episodes 1 to 6. So good.
Yeah, the next 13 episodes are great. You know, you have some that are more intellectual dilemmas, and then some are more the action where you're literally running for your lives away from the Cylons.
As it was well reported, we have Richard Hatch, one of the stars of the original show, returning.
Richard, who was Apollo in the original series, is doing 2 episodes for us this season. He's playing a man called Tom Zarek, who was sort of a Nelson Mandela type figure who was a prisoner for 20 years.
Expect a lot of great action sequences. And I think as far as my character is concerned, you're gonna find out a lot about why she is the way she is.
The backstory between Kara, Starbuck, and Lee Adama regarding the death of Lee's brother, and the fact that Adama doesn't know what Starbuck did, which directly led to Adama's death.
Put it this way, I've realized that I'm more evil than I thought I was when I shot the miniseries.
Tear your head off and throw your body out of an airlock!
You're gonna find out a little bit more about the Cylons, about their true nature, what they have in store for the humans, why they haven't killed them all off yet.
There's so much romance, sex, adventure.
This is not your parents' Battlestar Galactica. This is an adult show for grown-ups.
I hope that Battlestar Galactica is an experience that people will find riveting on a dramatic level, as well as fantastical and exciting.
You have to really prepare yourself to take this journey. You jump on board and it's a fast ride. You won't be spoon-fed, and you'll be quite surprised with everything that happens. So if you like the miniseries, you'll be blown away by the series.
You are joining the Colonial Fleet, boys and girls, not some after-school club. Seats. Pilots call me Starbuck. You may refer to me as God. And we don't have any flight simulators on board, so we're putting you in the cockpit. Today.
Well, I think that the main approach is to write them as people and write them as characters inhabiting a place in our universe, whether it be the president or the best pilot aboard the ship or the turncoat who is amongst us. Those are what's featured. Those ideas are what lead the way in terms of how those characters are shaped and in terms of what they do. The fact that they're male or female is not a non-issue, because obviously men are different from women, but it's not the main issue. It's not the thing that drives us.
When I first read the script, I had no idea. I mean, I knew the original series, but I had no idea that Starbuck was a man in the original series. And so my father was like, you need to go and you need to watch, you know, some of the original series before you audition for this. And so I did, and we're watching the show and we're like, they're talking about Starbuck. Where's Starbuck? We have no idea. And then we realized it was Dirk Benedict, and we're like, oh. So that's why the casting director asked me if I was okay with this.
Making Starbuck a woman was one of the first things that I thought of, and then as I was sort of stroking out who all the cast of characters were, The original Galactica was just very male-oriented, and trying to just sort of even it up and make it more interesting, some of the roles naturally just became women to make it a more interesting show.
Well, making Starbuck a woman was Ron's idea. He felt that the rogue pilot, the cigar-chomping kind of anti-hero, kid at heart, was a sensibility that we had seen a lot played by men, from Harrison Ford through Dirk Benedict. And so suddenly it felt like a novel idea once again if you said, okay, let's make it a woman.
Full colors. Ah!
We got a hell of an actress playing this role.
I thought that it was a smart choice to make Starbuck a woman. I feel that anyone that was put in these roles of the main characters of the original series was going to take some slack. Whether you make it, a man, a woman, or a dog, you're gonna get comparisons to the old character.
Crap, get me out of here! Go, go.
I think that making Starbuck a woman immediately, you can't really compare her to Dirk Benedict's portrayal of Starbuck because you can't. It's a woman. Like, you can sit there and say, well, they're kind of the same, but at the end of the day, we have different anatomy. We're not the same.
Starbuck! What are you doing? The captain's been looking all over for you. Boomer, I'm beginning to agree with you. Something's going on around here.
The original. Well, first of all, I'm not black, and I'm not male. And I'm a Cylon. So they've taken this character on a major spin, and I think a lot of people were quite upset with that. They'd watch the whole mini like, this is great, love it, and all of a sudden like, no, not Boomer.
Boomer, as another woman, I wanted to use certain things about her. There's a secret at the heart of who the Cylons are and what they're all about that plays into the fact that Boomer is a woman.
Boomer's out for blood. Boomer wants nothing less than the utter destruction of all the Colonials. The problem is that she doesn't know it. And she's been sent on assignment, and she is existing amongst our colonial crew. And as far as she's concerned, she is Sharon. She flies a Raptor. She's on our side. And occasionally she has a bad dream, or occasionally she has a moment of confusion. And it's becoming quite apparent to her that something is very, very seriously wrong. But only we know what really is the case. She doesn't know. And watching her try to find out what the situation really is part of the fun of the first season.
She's dealing with a lot of her own personal issues, coming to grips of who she is, her true nature, and there's not just one Boomer, because she is a Cylon. There's many possibilities.
So looks like we're going to be staying here for a while.
Our main antagonist, Gaius Baltar, operates purely out of his own agenda and to satisfy his own needs and desires. And so what better way to get at a man who's that brilliant and yet that weak than to go at him with the most beautiful woman in the world?
She's a seductress. There's the 12 models of Cylons, and I suppose number 6's model uses her female charms, I guess. Since number 6 is a new character, I don't have all that, comments from the fans of the original, like Starbuck or Adama or Apollo. I haven't had to deal with that, but I think we put a little bit different spin on the character between obviously the writers and Michael Reimer, who directed the miniseries, and myself. We had a little bit of leeway with what we could do with it, and because we weren't trying to fit into, something that was already there. So hopefully we made her a little bit more interesting than just a robot woman.
We knew, once again, we'd be looking for someone to inhabit probably the most complex character in number 6, who simultaneously is out to destroy the world and yet out for love, which she is.
I like playing with the idea that the Cylons almost made the humanoid Cylons a little too human, that they can experience and they can feel and they have certain emotions. They might not understand them exactly, or they might be muted, or we're not quite sure yet what exactly their scope is, but they're definitely feeling creatures.
Humanity's very survival rests in your hands. Now, if only you had actual Cylons.
Throughout the series, there's more clones of number 6. And, so one of my clones isn't as sexual. She uses other parts of her. You know, she hides the sexuality. It comes out a little bit, but she hides it more because she's trying to get something across. You can't just come into any situation with this full-on va-va-va-voom mode and expect people to believe you. So that's one of the clones. And so I'm starting to get a few other clones that show different sides of number 6 a little bit.
I didn't plant any bomb anywhere at any time, and you know that.
I don't know anything of the sort. Now, if you'll excuse me.
It's just been fun and interesting because it is a much more sort of balanced show in terms of the genders and who gets to play what in science fiction, which is just not the way it's usually done.
No, Sharon wouldn't give up without a much harder fight.
Now you're telling me you're a machine. You're a synthetic woman. A robot.
I've said it 3 times now.
Well, forgive me, I'm having the tiniest little bit of trouble believing that, because the last time anybody saw the Cylons, they looked more like walking chrome toasters.
In the original series, the Cylons were the creation of an alien race that was setting out to destroy the humans.
A race of reptiles called Cylons.
And, of course, they were guys in suits. So going into the show, there was a discussion about whether we should maintain that same aesthetic. But as we continued to develop the show, we realized that that would take us out of the show and create a wall with the audience saying they would know that it was a guy in a suit. And so the decision was made to make the Cylons entirely virtual.
By your command.
Michael Reimer, who has laid the groundwork for the entire series as the director of the miniseries, had conceived the Cylons as basically being an interesting piece of the set. He wanted them to not interfere with the performances that he was getting from the actors, and so we had them stationed at the back of the room. But unfortunately, as soon as they showed up in the scene, and we started roughing them into the rough cut that Michael was working on, he realized that they just completely stole the scene. And so we put more and more shots of Cylons into the miniseries.
The decision to do it completely CGI was that you could control and make them look totally unique. Again, following the thought process of we want something totally different. If you use a person, your hip, no matter how thin you are, is still going to be an 18-inch waist or 20-inch waist or whatever. And you will always have that human aspect to your Centurion.
We had used a number of different approaches to the Cylon movement, including actually tracking a moving person and allowing the Cylon to be quite human in its motions. And it was an eerie effect. It was very strange to see this shiny metallic monster, walking into a room with a swagger. But Michael's reaction to it originally, I thought it was quite interesting. But Michael's reaction was to burst out laughing and say, "Nice cocktail walk." So we eliminated it from the show, and our Cylons no longer swagger into a scene. They're quite a bit more mechanical now.
So the decision was made to go totally CGI, where you can create something that's basically running on a ball joint at his hip. And they look fantastic because they're total creations.
It has full articulation, meaning that all of the components of it work just like a physical object. The fingers are all connected to the hand and operate in an articulate way. Likewise, the arms, legs, head, everything. It therefore has a very particular way of moving that is limited by its physicality in the virtual world. But they still, frequently, we utilize very human reactions to them. The Cylon will address individuals. It will face them, look them in the eye, behave threateningly. But it's distinctly not human. And through the course of the first season, we're continuing to develop the feeling of the Cylon and how it works within a scene. When we go to do a sequence with the Cylons, we use our friends behind us here to stand in so that the actors have an eye line. In a scene with a Cylon, an actor doesn't know where it is or how tall it is or what it's doing. So we use our stand-ins, we have them in several different sizes and positions so that we can demonstrate what the Cylon will be doing in the scene so the actors have more to work with. We rough it in, send it to the producers so that they can art direct the Cylon, and frequently our directors get involved as well and say, well, and honestly, we'll direct the virtual character of the Cylon. And we'll say, oh, he wouldn't do that. We'd like to have him, he would really turn away, from camera at this point. And we take all of that into account and rework the Cylon until we get the performance that the director and the executive producers want. We never drive the scene with the visual effect, ever. We drive the scene with the best composition and the best performance. Then we back it in from there and put the creature in. We haven't really thoroughly explored them, even in the first season, as to what their capabilities are, whether they're sentient or any of those elements yet. So it's fertile ground for season 2, and we're waiting to do even more with them. But it's been an exciting season for the Cylons. There'll be quite a bit of Cylon action.
When they first hired me and we did the breakdown, they had budgeted for an art department of about 3 people. We wound up with an art department of 13 people. That's the scope of what we had to design in a very short period of time. Overall, we must have had 25, maybe 30 different sets. The biggest ones were the CIC room, which you're in now, connected to a whole series of hallways leading to Adama's quarters. That set was like 200 feet long and 100 feet wide and maybe 40 feet high. So that's a lot of scenery. The other set was the hangar bay, which was, again, that was like 100 by 100, and they get floor to ceiling and wall to wall in the stage. A lot of it is based in fact. We kind of looked at an aircraft carrier and said that's a city unto itself, and how do they get ships from this level to that level? There's all of the logic and all of the functionality that has to go along with what may look cool on the camera. You have to have a backstory and you have to have a kind of a reason for it. And if you look around this room, everything's laid out and delineated as to what function that room is as opposed to that room or that area.
One of the major things that they wanted to do was have it be a very human thing where people did a lot of things. Instead of flipping a switch and something printing out somewhere, people physically carry messages back and forth. And that was reflected in the design. The CIC became a very large space because rather than having 3 people sitting running the ship, you suddenly had 30. And we kind of went with an arena sort of concept.
He doesn't have a chair that he sits in. He goes from station to station to station, and everybody's around him, and he is the center of all attention and all attraction. So he can orchestrate if you choose to put it that way. Like he's literally conducting the ship when he's in this set.
If it does anything, take it out.
The decision to make the production design feel more real was the commandment. Thou shalt be real was sort of what we said overall in every component of the show. So the production design looked toward existing ships. What does it mean to be on a ship? I was less interested in what is a ship of the future really going to be like, and trying to imagine gleaming surfaces and sort of magic things that do the wow factor of, hey, that's what a door looks like in the future, and hey, that's how they get their coffee.
When Picard orders his Earl Grey tea hot, it comes out of a machine. If Adama wants Earl Grey tea hot, he has to go and boil water, get the tea leaves, and pour them over. So we wanted a really physical kind of show. Switches tend to be real switches. Phones are big, heavy, clunky phones.
Duala stands at her console, and this is how she works her headset. And there's a cord on it that ties her to the thing, because that's how people in those jobs actually function.
If you look at some of the dressing, there's the older style telephones, out of the 1940s actually. And they actually are out of a submarine. So that kind of came as a natural extension of the design, to have kind of a retro feel, and it wasn't super slick. It just was, it had a nice worn chip kind of look to it. It was a really fine line, like how much aging do we do in this thing, because you don't want Adama to come across looking like he's the captain of some junky freighter.
Phones with cords, awkward manual valves, computers that, well, barely deserve the name. It was all designed to operate against an enemy who could infiltrate and disrupt even the most basic computer systems.
And Galactica is sort of emblematic of the idea that the technology had betrayed them. The technology had betrayed these people, had created Cylons that then ran amok and then turned on them, and then they had to take a very hard, big step backward from what they had created, leaving them in this interesting place where they have ships that are capable of traveling faster than light, and they have a sort of, much more advanced things than we do today, but they couldn't network the computers together, and they've had to do many things to sort of take some of the advanced technology away from themselves, which once again introduces the human element back into the show. Our CIC is manned by easily 3-4 times the number of people that man the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. On the Enterprise, it's a very small group of people, and they can just press buttons and everything happens magically. In our CIC, it's a very complicated arrangement. There's many layers of officers that didn't have to give orders like on a real naval ship. There's many more things that have to be touched and adjusted and looked at by human beings. It makes you feel like Galactica is run by people as opposed to a big master computer that just handles everything.
What are we doing there?
It's not responding, sir.
Are you even trained to use this thing?
We try and sort of go with sort of almost a retro high-tech look. And a lot of the stuff that we use is we take things that have a interesting design flair to them. We use a lot of stuff from the 50s and 60s. A lot of them are manufactured because there's a lot of very specific things that don't exist anywhere in the real world. What we like to do is incorporate a lot of found objects because we like the idea of having familiar-looking things that we give a bit of a twist to. We call it galacticizing. We give a bit of a twist to the props so that they fit in with the motif of the show. One of the key props in the show is a lighter that Commander Adama got from his father that he then gives to his son. It was an Art Deco lighter that I found at a flea market, and we use that. The weapons that we use for Battlestar Galactica are a variety of things. We have our own colonial sidearms, which is incorporating a real gun into a design that we used, and it's made to look different, and it has to have a variety of functions. It's supposed to fire rockets as well as fire regular bullet projectiles. We've also got a variety of other weapons that we've used that are actually existing weapons that we've modified somewhat. What we've done is found some really interesting obscure sort of weapons or really exotic weapons that you don't see very often, and we've given them a bit of a Galactica twist to them. Someone came up with the idea during the miniseries. I was told it was sort of a play on words that because they were cutting corners on the budget, they thought, well, we should cut corners everywhere. So they cut the corners off of every piece of paper that appears in the show. So we either have to photocopy them, trim them all by hand with the corners cut off and the edges thinned down, or we have to print them one page at a time. It started off kind of as a joke that got out of hand, and now, unfortunately, I've inherited it, so I have to deal with it on a daily basis. Yeah, the Galactica world is definitely an analog world, but we've got that mixture of high-tech and low-tech, which I really find appealing.
We're creating a vision and environment. We're telling you what this world is, and we have to make you believe it. You have to be very careful just not to cross over that line where people say, oh, that's phony or that's fake. So that's why we do all this research and try and give people the old-style phone to hang on to. There are no flip phones, there are no cell phones in this ship. You got to go to the wall and crank this thing. It's kind of, think about it, it sounds funny, but it's really believable.
The jobs, the props, the set design has to convey that sense of reality. You don't want to break the notion that this is something real. You don't want to let that. You never want to let that ball drop, because as soon as you do, you've sort of shattered the whole illusion of what we're trying to create.
Hey. Aren't you guys Baltar? Yeah, I haven't done anything. Could you come up here, please? Yeah, please.
What are you doing?
Giving up my seat.
Like hell.
Whatever future is left is going to depend on whoever survives. Give me one reason why I'm a better choice than one of the greatest minds of our time.
Set against I suppose, the hilarity of not being in control of what you think or what you're going to say, is the awful tragedy of being implicated or implicit in a major disaster, in a genocide. So in terms of litmus, which is the name of one of our episodes, he goes through the universal indicators from from indigo to red, and he's fluctuating with colours all of the time because there's so much going on. As an actor, that's an absolute joy, to be able to be not tied down to a personality, so that there are always things that you can explore.
Congratulations, Doctor. You've just uncovered your very first Cylon. Now here's an interesting moment in the life of Gaius Baltar.
Is everything okay?
Yeah.
I thought it was just green or red.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that, actually.
She probably doesn't know, but let's find out.
Congratulations, it's green. It's very bright green. You're not a Cylon.
Really?
100% human and very, very bright green as well.
I know this guy in London who I respect. In fact, he's a real genius and got several degrees from Oxford, but he's a very bad liar. And that amuses me, that somebody who is so brilliant, he's a very, very clever guy, but can't really tie his own shoelaces. It's hopeless in a supermarket, wouldn't know what to do. And is in that respect, because mind's always on theories and the ideas and the beauty of is a very bad liar, is just kind of transparent. So that was something I wanted to bring to the table about Gaius Baltar.
Where's my Cylon detector, Doctor?
Oh, that. Yes, it's taking longer than expected, unfortunately.
It's not working this time, Gaius. He can see right through you.
Well, there are a number of obstacles, none of them insurmountable, of course, but they do tend to slow us down. For a start, the lack of proper facilities. The water shortage, well, of course, the water shortage, not to mention...
Cut the BS.
Our main antagonist, Gaius Baltar, is not psychotic, he's not schizophrenic or clinically insane, and he's not a mustache-twirling evil villain. He's simply a pathological narcissist. He operates purely out of his own agenda and to satisfy his own needs and desires. And so what better way to get at a man who's that brilliant and yet that weak than to go at him with the most beautiful woman in the world?
I had nothing to do with this. You know I had nothing to do with this.
You have an amazing capacity for self-deception. How do you do that?
How many people know about me, specifically, that I'm involved?
And even now, as the fate of your entire world hangs in the balance, all you can think about is how this affects you.
Well, I think he's coming to terms with, he's coming to terms more with this hallucination, who is number 6, in his mind. He's becoming more comfortable, I suppose, with the idea of being bonkers. Or at least, I do not believe for one moment that he thinks there isn't a chip in his head. What I'm trying to say is that there's the possibility for somebody like this that really there's no chip in his head. He's just going nuts. But Baltar hasn't thought about that. Baltar totally believes that, there is some kind of thing stuck in his brain that is broadcasting number 6's image to him.
I'd say you have a serious problem.
If I can help.
He's a strange one, isn't he?
She helps me and hinders me, I suppose, almost simultaneously to, to keep me alive from episode to episode.
With the right equipment, the image could be enlarged and sharpened. We could see his face.
Enlarging the image is no problem, but sharpening it...
Take forever.
Would take at least a day, sir.
I don't think I'm really taking anything from the original, apart from the name. And the name brings with it an enormous backdrop, in the sense of I have entered this drama as Gaius Baltar, and the lion's share of people who watch this show or know it know that I am going to be the guy who is bad. I mean, Baltar was the baddie. So in that respect. And I've seen John Colicos, I remember him so well. I've got a visual kind of picture of him. My whole thing was to be as different as I possibly could from that.
Full colors.
Thank you. Thank you all. Pleasant.
James is just a riot. He just cracks me up. I had a scene where I had to dead look at him and not make an expression for the whole scene, and he's sitting there cracking me up inside, and I'm going, okay, don't laugh, don't laugh, don't laugh, don't laugh. I'm gonna laugh.
What can I do for you?
You can zip up your fly.
So,
My blood test.
You're right about one thing, Gaius. There is something very intriguing about her.
very good, very good.
This kind of a character is quite new, in the sense of he might do something heroic, but it would be for totally the wrong reason. So yes, he is ambiguous and ambivalent, and in the nature of somebody who is very hard to pin down or understand where they're coming from, I believe that's why they are interesting. Because all we want to do when we look in somebody's eyes is kind of be able to say, I kind of know who you are and I've got your energy and I get it. And with this individual, I think it would be very difficult to pin a color on him or say he's exactly this kind of a thing. So that's great.
When they first hired me to do Galactica, the only mandate was show me something we've never seen before, which was, when you think about it, it's a dream on one hand and a nightmare on the other, because you have no reference points.
When we came into the series, because we've changed to high definition instead of film, we did some camera tests and found we had to take that aging even further.
Because we're shooting this in high definition television, it's very crisp. It really pops colors, and you have to be very aware that it doesn't get too music video looking. So we've aged this thing incredibly, to the extent where you look at the screens and we've taken waxes and paints and literally gone over all of the screens to knock the brightness back.
Well, we decided long ago that the visual style wanted to be very snotty is the word. We attempted to make it a reality-based looking film. And now, of course, we're now shooting high definition 24p, which is an exciting medium because we can create so many of those visual looks in the camera. It's really a digital format. It's just a different kind of a scan rate. What you're shooting right now is video, which is an interlace format. And what we're shooting is a progressive scan format, which gives it an illusion closer to what film will give you. I have control of the image with a master setup unit that I use, and I can go in to work with different grain structures or noise structures, if you will. I can work with contrasts, blacks and whites and highlights and shadows, and I can crush blacks down, I can blow the highlights out, and I can create colors with it, and I can do all kinds of different things that I'm doing in this medium that a lot of people still aren't doing yet.
Well, Battlestar Galactica attempts to present its environments in as realistic a way as possible. So, for example, we shoot on lenses that are longer than you might expect to shoot a science fiction show, where you might use a wide-angle lens to present a staggering vista or a glorious set. We'll shoot on a longer lens to feature the individual amidst this set versus the set.
Yeah, the visual style, and this was very much Ron Moore and David Icke's vision before I was even brought in, was we want to make a documentary style science fiction show. We want it to feel real. We want it to feel the grit of what it's like to live in a spaceship, what it's like to have the world destroyed.
Doing a handheld show is always a bit chaotic because it never lends itself to that much stability. The cameras are very heavy, So, you know, the camera operator is, you know, constantly trying to hold it up, and it adds to the chaos of the show, which then helps the grittiness of the look.
That was one of the very first decisions to make the show sort of a documentary look and feel to the whole thing, and that comes directly out of me working in science fiction television, mostly Star Trek. If you look at the way Star Trek is shot and produced and realized, it hasn't changed very much in the last 20 years, realistically. It's very, you know, the audience is distant from the material. You don't believe anybody really lives aboard the Starship Enterprise. You can imagine that they do, but you don't really believe that people live and breathe there and that they live out their day-to-day lives in that environment. It's more escapist. It's a stylistic convention of what the future should be. I find that distances the audience from the drama that you're trying to tell. The further away you get from a real place and real people and real situations, the more the audience is just sort of watching the show, the less they're experiencing the show.
You're not lighting it like you would normally light another show because they want it messy, and it is a very messy look. A lot of dark eyes, a lot of top light, a lot of, you know, just industrial type of looking space. With Mary, obviously, you make her look beautiful, and number 6 has to look beautiful, but Eddie doesn't want to look beautiful. He likes it the way he is, and keeps saying, don't make me look too good. And he's very serious about it. He likes the messiness of it all. It adds just to the texture. Oh, it's great.
For the whole look of Battlestar, we went for more of a feature quality, meaning that it's not about how much makeup they wear, but it's bringing out the essence and quality of the character. So with saying that, there may be actors that are only in the chair for a few minutes, and then we'll get more involved characters like number 6, who's in my makeup chair for 45 an hour, depending on the outfit she's wearing. And she allows me to create and help create number 6's look. And also working with the DP, Stephen, and lighting her so she's almost luminous.
Our looks are very, very modern looks. We're not trying to do cutting edge modern, but we're right in there. If you look in magazines or other things that people are wearing around you, we're kind of right in that niche. We don't have any futuristic hairstyles per se. The theme of the show was kind of to stay away from weird hairdos and weird colors. Our military people are easily identifiable. All the girls have ponytails, all the guys have buzz cuts. You have to kind of match what their wardrobe is saying, and you know, to have a wild hairdo and a normal wardrobe, you would see that wouldn't work. So it's a very day wear look.
Because everyone is running for their life, they didn't grab a lot of clothes when they left their home or their office or wherever it was. So it creates an interesting element for costuming in that it's different. We don't have a lot of clothing and costuming to deal with, but the ones that we do finally select have to be dead on and be able to function for the run of the series. It's a shipping crisis, so you know, the edge has to be there, that they haven't had a lot of time to think about how they look.
I generally like to construct stunts, and the majority of the stunts in our show are fight scenes and things like that. I generally like to construct them so the actors can do almost all of their own stuff. We have a really handy cast, and generally speaking, we don't have a dud in the crowd. They're all pretty active. Sometimes we have women fighting with women and men fighting with women and vice versa, and but we break away from the traditional, you know, barroom brawl with men. Even sort of our glamour character, 6, played by Tricia, has been getting into the fight too.
The one episode where I had a stunt fight, I'd never done that before, so I, you know, had to work with the stunt coordinator and practice at home quite a few of my punches and kicks, and you know, with a towel over the shower rack and you're punching away. And
also, it gives my stunt women the opportunity to do things that they probably wouldn't do normally, because we traditionally don't cross those boundaries. So it's given my stunt cast the opportunity to do some great fights.
The world has changed so much in the past 5 or 6 years with styles of shooting. There are almost no rules anymore. But I do think that the cutting edge part of this show is the fact that we are manipulating a new medium, the digital medium, and we're pushing it to the very edge that it exists right now and trying to go past it, and it's just a matter of learning.
You put a tremendous amount of work and effort into all this sort of prep, writing it, getting things lined up, getting all the pieces lined up together, and then the reward for all that is you get this piece of film. And here's this footage of something that, you know, you talked about in your office, or here's some notion that you were, you know, telling the other writers about months ago. And oh, here's this episode, and it has it in it. And there's that Viper doing the thing that you asked it to do. And there's the interior of the Cylon Raider, when we've realized it the way you always hoped. That's what it's all about. It's the satisfaction of the film itself, of, wow, look at that, you know, Eddie Olmos, look at him go, look at him do this role, oh my God, it's great, you know, I mean, that's why you do the job at all, is to the satisfaction of watching the story actually happen.
Battlestar Galactica is unusual in visual effects because we're studiously avoiding science fiction visual effects. We're not creating a sci-fi look, something that is going to take the audience out of the show. Instead, we want the audience, Ron Moore's concept was always that the audience would continue to be involved with the performance. They were there for the spectacle of human drama, and we just needed to frame it with visual effects. And so we've struggled to make sure that our visual effects are smoothly integrated into the live action, and that there's nothing fanciful about them, that there's physical operations behind everything that happens.
Yeah, things like the space jump, we designed our set in such a way that we could get a Viper from its standing position into a launch tube. We then yank it, physically pull it for maybe 20 feet or so, which begins the shot down the tube, which then is taken over by visual effects.
In doing the flying sequences for Battlestar, there are two key elements. One is to create some real physics in space. In truth, in dealing with space, space is vast. It's really, really big. And so going anywhere in space is actually a very time-consuming, boring thing to do. So we have to take some license in getting our characters from one place to another. We try always to do it in a manner of cutting, as opposed to actually saying that they're taking any kind of magical super light speed jumps. And we try to always place the audience in the canopy with our characters. We like to put our audience into that environment so that they can feel the threat of being in those conditions, under battle conditions. So in dealing with space, we try to always pay attention to the physics. You'll notice our ships all use RCSs, or reaction control thrusters, to rotate, to reorient themselves. They don't have big magical engines that glow in the dark and make them go. They have rocket engines that are actually fueled by a liquid fuel. It's something that's very understandable. They know when the engine thrust is big and bright, that they're going fast. And, in other words, it makes a certain amount of logical sense. The audience doesn't spend time getting involved with, how did they get from place to place? How fast are they going? How does that thing work? They're not involved with that. They're paying attention to what the actor is doing. And in the case of Battlestar, we're very fortunate because we have actors that can not only fill that time, make that real for the audience, but excel and have created this incredible environment that's very, very real for the audience.
Colonial 1 is ready to jump.
All civilian ships away, including Colonial 1.
Recover fighters. Stand by to jump.
In our show, we do what we call jumping. We go from one piece of space to another piece of space dimensionally. The ship doesn't speed up and then zip away at light speed. It literally crosses dimensionally from one space to another instantaneously. So there's none of the usual stuff that you see, for instance, in Star Trek or episodics, where they speed up and there's a great streak and they fly away. And and all of that, they simply appear in one place of space, in one area of space, as opposed to another. So the interesting thing about our jump effect was that originally we had done a bunch of 3D design work. Ron Moore's original concept for it involved, I believe, what he called an origami-like unfolding through space, which sounds great. But in execution, we found that what would happen as we began to develop it, there were a number of good concepts that we had for it. But it became obvious that taking time out to do a sci-fi gag where a ship is unfolding like an origami bird was just not going to work. It didn't fit into the context of the show. And so we worked with Michael on a very, very simple effect that just reveals the ship through a light effect that is specifically meant to be unobtrusive, make the story point, and then move on.
Jump 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Specifically today we had a scene that takes place inside of our Raptor, and the Raptor is a helicopter-like spaceship that with a large glass canopy in the front of it. In this particular case, the actors are doing a scene where they jump and they came in too close to a planet, and they react to coming in very, very close to this planet and having to correct the attitude of the ship and get into orbit.
Okay, and action. On and ready, jump in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Jump. And planet.
Oh, frack me!
So for the actors, basically they're looking out the glass canopy and they see green and a bunch of blue dots and little triangles stuck on a screen, which doesn't look much like a planet, and it's not very threatening. So we have to get them on board with exactly what's going on outside. We do quite a bit of green screen work on the show. Of course, our cast is pretty familiar with this now, and they're pretty seasoned pilots, so they understand what we're talking about when we get into that. But it's great fun because the ships are mounted on gimbals with airbags that allow us to rock the ship and add vibration. So for the purposes of the performance, the actors are actually physically being jolted from one side of the ship to the other to give a more natural feel to it. It really helps them to get into the swing of the scene.
Cut.
Cutting.
The trick to doing good visual effects in television is we use basically the same tools that features use now, because we're finalizing our product on high def. High def is just below 2K resolution for film. So the image size is virtually the same as you would use on a feature. So we have to create all the materials at full resolution just like you would for a feature. But the real trick is not so much the tools, it's working with the director and executive producers to create scenarios that allow us to explore new things in a visual effects realm. And that's been very successful on Battlestar. We have the nature of the show itself, the way that the components of the show, the sets, the ships, everything about it have a natural feel to the audience. It's an instantly recognizable feel. It's not false or organic or highly art designed. It's very basic and a shorthand to the audience, that they understand that when you're in the Viper, it's a fighter and it's a one-man ship. They understand that the Galactica is a huge landing strip in space. It's instantly understood because of the design of it. That benefits us a great deal. And then being able to execute story elements very quickly and smoothly without bothering to explain why the spaceship does this or why the spaceship does that. And I think that is really the secret to creating a good visual effect, is basically good design, and then to have the cooperation of the writers and the director in following through on the layout of the visual effects and how they're integrated into the show.
Check on my mark.
I had spent 10 years doing Star Trek, and then I spent a couple more years doing Roswell, and I had been steeped in the genre of science fiction on TV for a very long time. And I was sort of tired of it personally, and I sort of felt that the audience was tired of it too. I think that a lot had changed between 1978, when the original Galactica series was on the air, and 2003, you know, when the miniseries came on, and it seemed wrong not to sort of, you know, acknowledge that and sort of move the show forward instead of trying to recapture nostalgically something that was long gone and that existed, you know, in the 1970s. To take the concept and take the show and take the premise and bring it forward and sort of pay homage to the spirit of what the show was, what the show could have been even in its day, and try to then make it something that would work today, I thought was doing it a greater service than to just sort of lose yourself in the nostalgia of it.
We were concerned about alienating fans of the original Battlestar Galactica, but we also felt that those fans, although they might miss certain specific trappings of the original show, like the cast or certain aesthetic values that the original show had, we really thought that they would ultimately respond to the origin, the nucleus of Glen Larson's idea, which was very simply a ragtag fleet banding together to survive. And that nucleus, that germ of an idea that so successfully spawned the original Battlestar Galactica, was one we were very grateful to have as our resource as well. As for science fiction fans in general, I think we both, Ron Moore and I, both felt that for the same reasons why we were interested in a more realistic approach to the genre, as fans of the genre, they would follow suit.
My first reaction when I read Battlestar Galactica on the front was, oh no, why go back to material that's been done? You know, why not come up with something new? But then I read it, and it is new, and that's why I did it. Had it been the same as the old show, I think I would have been really reluctant to do it, because you can't do the same as an old classic. But the point about the show is it's a new thing, and once I appreciated that, and you know, straight away it was obvious to me that Adama was no Apollo from the original, and that was a release, a breath of fresh air, which meant that this was exciting, doable, and you know, I was thrilled to get the part.
I think the show is completely different. A year ago, when we had shot the pilot, I made some comparisons because I actually had thought that it was very similar. But now I think that I think the things that are the same is the name is the same and the character names are the same. The end goal is the same, but it's different. It's a lot different. I think that there's a lot more pain on this show.
I absolutely feel it was a good move to update Battlestar Galactica. The miniseries did do well. You know, it was remarkable. We were a little worried going into it with the backlash of the fans of the original series and everything. But, you know, I think there was those that boycotted it and didn't watch, but from what I've experienced, now they've kind of come around and gone, oh, well, maybe we should pay attention to this.
I completely think it was a great idea to reimagine it rather than just have either a continuation or just to almost redo the entire thing. Because the fact of the matter is, 25 years later, we're not living in the same world as before, you know, and it would fit very much for the time then, but I don't think it would have flown as well as some people either wanted it to or imagined that it might have. Especially after 9/11, I mean, it took on a completely new meaning, and to not go this way, I think would have been insulting.
I think it's a wonderful thing that it succeeded, obviously. But I also think that one of the reasons it succeeded had very little to do with its sameness or difference to the original. In my opinion, it's exciting to try and bring something new to people who are already in love and devoted to a certain genre or a certain story. And what happened with us was exciting because I think we didn't end up trying to do something new as much as we ended up trying to do something real. How much do I love the creator of this show, Ron Moore, and his writing staff, and David Icke, and their ideas. Well, the material is fabulous. Let's start with that. And I can't even tell you, I've never seen a cast like this. I don't honestly think there is one person on this set that I don't enjoy seeing on a daily basis.
You said Ron and you said David, and I would also include Michael Reimer, who directed our first show, as somebody who has really steered this into the century that we are in and given it a different look. it's a great opportunity for all of us to work with people who care so much and really have such great ideas.
Aside from having one of the best cast and crews to work with, they're just, everybody's amazing and sweet and hard workers and everything. It's fun. It's fun to do.
I love it. It's so fun. How can you not enjoy it? I love it. It's really exciting. I mean, there's tough times to go through, and I've been learning a lot of stuff as we go along, but all in all, just learning to not take myself so seriously. It's a wonderful show. Everyone's trying their best. There's an excitement on set. A really kind of family feel with the crew and cast.
This show is pretty well as diverse as anything I've ever done in my life. It has a really fine acting core, and I think that they all really work hard, and they're very, very talented artists.
It's a tremendous cast. They have an extraordinary commitment to the material. They are very committed to their roles. They believe in what we're doing. They like the scripts, they embellish on them, they make up bits of business and stuff on their own, which just add to the texture and the richness of what we do. When I come to Vancouver and visit the set, I'm always impressed by how seriously the entire production takes it, that they all believe in what we're doing, that the Galactica is a very real place to them. And it's extraordinary. I don't think it's the most committed and passionate cast that I've been associated with.
Ron and I have had some discussions about some really interesting character spins that people will probably not be expecting in a second season. Where we're going to leave them at the end of the first season is going to platform a lot of that. And I think that while we certainly don't have the entirety of it figured out yet, it's really interesting that just when you think you can't possibly come up with another idea for an episode of the show, suddenly you have more than you could possibly fit into a single season. It's just the nature of how these things evolve.
Everyone says, okay, what do we do next? How do we make it better? How do we build on this? And has that happened? There are definitely episodes that are as good, if not better, than the pilot. And I think the overall journey of these characters and the story is very much, at the level we had at the pilot, which is really what matters. It's story. It's about what is the story? What happens to these people? How compelling is that? And there's plenty that happens that's going to be compelling.
Battlestar Galactica is blessed. It's just an incredible show. You've got, Michael Reimer came in and did an incredible job of establishing the premise of the show. Ron Moore writes incredible scripts. The actors are dead on the money every day. Just incredible. There's no downside to Battlestar Galactica. It's a fantastic show.